Just a moment. Okay. Okay, so you can see that okay? Okay, great. So thank you again for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. My name is David Stoller. We're going to talk, excuse me? Okay, I'll continue then. We are going to talk tonight about the SLA and the community and how we interact and what we do together, and just a little bit about the agency itself. We have a threefold mission at the SLA, and each of these three areas interact directly with communities. Those three mission parts are to regulate, to promote, and to support. And what that means specifically, we regulate and control the manufacture and distribution of alcoholic beverages within the state for the purpose of fostering and promoting temperance in their consumption and respect for the law. The first way we do that is through licensing. Licensing includes everything from a one-day permit for an outdoor event or the beer that's for sale at your local Duane Reade. Licensing helps keep people safe, keeps the playing field level from business to business, community to community, and makes sure that everybody is following the same rules. This includes one of our more popular recent programs, which is the temporary license program. Governor Hochul has recently made it much easier for many retailers and manufacturers to get temporary licenses to help small businesses in your community get moving more quickly. And also we have something that's pretty infamous with the CBs, the 500-foot law, which helps prevent oversaturation and make sure communities have a way to have their voices heard. I'll be talking certainly much more about that in a few minutes. Our next role is to promote the health, the welfare, and the safety of the people of the state of New York. We do that through enforcement. Our enforcement department handles complaints against businesses when they break the law by serving minors or intoxicated people, or when they become a focal point of violence or police activity. Our enforcement team is the team that goes out and takes care of that. And this is really about fair play, about safety, and about upholding the standards that you as a community pride yourselves in upholding. That's what our enforcement and that's what we're trying to promote at the SLA. We also support our final mandate is to support the economic growth, job development, and the state's alcohol beverage production industries and its tourism and recreation industry. We do this by supporting nearly 60,000 small businesses in New York State. There's 30,000 licensees in Zone 1 and nearly 6,400 in Brooklyn alone. So that's a lot of small businesses that interact with the SLA, get their licenses from the SLA, and which you as community boards do the vetting, the frontline vetting of these 6,400 licensees in Brooklyn and counting as we continue on. These licensees do about $80 billion in direct spending. That's with a B. And you can imagine what that tax base does for all of the programs that the state is trying to support, what makes New York State such a great state to live in and to work in. We're a top 5 state for manufacturing, #1 in cider, #2 in beer and distilled spirits, #4 in wine. Craft beverages and agritourism are the 3rd largest employer in the state. So we support these businesses through licensing considerations and helping make sure products are safe and competitive. And of course, the craft beer industry is really started nationwide. The trend started in Brooklyn with the Brooklyn Brewery. So we really pride ourselves in our state industry of alcoholic beverages. So that's what we do. That's our mission. But with 6,400 licensees in Brooklyn, I wanted to talk a little bit about oversaturation and about community standards, specifically about what we have in place to help prevent oversaturation and to help enforce your community standards and what you think is important. Probably the most important tool in our in our quiver, I guess is the expression, is the CB notice, right? It begins with the CB notice. I'm sure you're all familiar with these. When a business is getting started, they need to notify the CB. They do that, and once they have notified the community board, the CB has 30 days to opine on that application, to let us know, to make their recommendation to the SLA. And really that 30 days is the time for the community board and the applicant to meet and to come up with stipulations or agreements for how best that licensee can serve the community. Stipulations are an agreement over, the hours of a location, what hours you want it to be, what types of music, if they have a DJ or promoted music or live music or just background music, the security that they have, things like that. So that's where we really want to see the community board and the licensee, the applicant, get together and work together to come up with an agreement so that that applicant can be an upstanding member of your community. Of course, that's the best case scenario. In a lot of scenarios, you can't come to that agreement. An applicant would want to have, later hours than the community wants, or wants to have, live music when the community says we have too much. And if you can't agree, then the CB should recommend disapproval. And as soon as the CB recommends disapproval to the SLA, that means the application automatically goes before the full board for a full board hearing, at which the community can give evidence and opine on why they recommend that disapproval. And our chair of our board, Lily Fan, came up through the community boards. She was, I see a hand raised. We'll take a lot of questions when we're all done. Lily Fan was our chair, came up through the community boards, community board 7, I think, or it might be 4, community board 4 in Manhattan. So she takes community input very, very seriously. And, we try to reach a compromise then at the full board hearing between the community and the applicant. We usually say that if both sides are upset at the end of it, then we've done our job correctly. We try to kind of come down in the middle. So that's sort of the main vanguard that the community has to offer and how we interact with the community. There are 2 other big tools to preventing oversaturation and upholding community standards. And they involve, pretty famously what we call the 500-foot and the 200-foot rule. So I just wanted to go over them very briefly. The 500-foot rule says that if there are 3 or more on-premises liquor licenses within 500 feet of a new application, that applicant has to prove that they are in the public interest, that it's in the public interest for them to get their license. They do this by submitting evidence to an administrative law judge who holds an ALJ hearing, a 500-foot hearing. And this is the first place for the community to make themselves heard, to let the ALJ know if it thinks the license is in the public interest, if there's a reason for this license. And the ALJ as well takes that community input very, very seriously. That's the first step before a full board hearing that's going to occur. So the 500 rule looks a little something like this. We use something called LAMP, the Liquor Authority Mapping Project, which is a tool anyone can use. You're welcome to use it as well at lamp.sla.ny.gov. We look up a certain location where someone is applying for a liquor license, and really someone who is applying should start there as well. So here's a location, for example, in the Bronx called 18 Bedford Park Boulevard. We can zoom in a little bit here. You see the circle that represents 500 feet, and there are various insignia here, but the ones that we're really looking out for, I'm not sure if you can see my pointer or not, but we're looking for these little green martini glasses. Those are current full liquor license. And if you see within this 500-foot radius for this location, there's only one current liquor license, right? So there's only one. So this location, if someone was applying for it, would not have to have a 500-foot hearing. Now, they would still be, oh, thank you, Juan. They would still be, they would still have to notify the community board. They would still need to go through that process and have a full board hearing if the community disapproves, but they do not have to sit for a 500-foot hearing. So that's what the 500-foot rule looks like. There's another rule also quite famous called the 200-foot rule. I know they're very similar, but the 200-foot rule says that a full liquor license cannot be given within 200 feet of a house of worship or a school. That's a full liquor license, liquor, beer, and wine, all three together. So just to take a look at what that looks like, we can take our same address and zoom in a little bit. And this time we want the circle to be 200 feet instead of 500 feet. So here on this map here, this shows the circle shows 200 feet around this location. And we see these little upraised arms. Those are houses of worship. And we can see one here in this, the first century Christ Church is a house of worship within this 200 feet. So that means this location is not good for a full liquor license. It would automatically be disqualified. A beer license or a wine license, it could have, but it cannot have a full liquor license in this location. Now, one thing to note about that is the church or the school must be used exclusively for that purpose. It can't be a church, a storefront church that's renting apartments above it to non-church members. You can't have non-religious services offered there part of the time. Like it can't rent itself out to catered events or anything like that. It needs to be used exclusively as a church 100% of the time. Here's another example of how we measure the 200-foot law. We go door to door to measure this as the crow flies. So if there's a proposed licensed premises here, we'll look to see where the entrance to the sidewalk is, the pathway to the church or to the door of the church. And if this is within 200 feet, that cannot be, again, we cannot have a full liquor license. Similarly, for a school, we go again as the crow flies. So we take the hypotenuse of this triangle, to go back to your algebra days, to the door of the school, the entrance of the school, the main entrance of the school, an entrance that is used from the proposed license premise. And that is, if it's within 200 feet there, then that's another way that a applicant cannot have a liquor license within 200 feet. So those are very briefly the 500-foot and the 200-foot rule, and basically what we do at the Liquor Authority. At this point, I wanted to just open it up because I'm sure you have questions, and we hopefully have some answers for you to hear what you would like to know.
Hi, this is Yvonne Cummings, Community Board 3. Could you give examples of what's in the public interest, what has been presented to you?
Sure. Juan, do you want to take that question?
Yes, hi, good evening. The public interest could be anything from the applicant providing a different type of cuisine, a different method of operation. So like, for example, let's say that in the area, there's perhaps, I don't know, 10 restaurants, and they're all pretty much from the same type of cuisine. Well, the applicant could post that they are going to propose, let's just say, instead of I don't know, let's just say a Caribbean fare. Well, they're going to be a specific type of Caribbean type of food, or perhaps they're going to be a nightclub with some type of entertainment, or they're going to have basically something that will change the license mode of the entire area. That could be something that they could submit as in the public interest.
Thank you. And also, I was remiss in saying I'm enjoying this, receiving this information. It's very informative.
I think there's a lot of questions. So maybe Ms. Church, could you handle the calling people specifically? I would appreciate that.
Sure, not a problem. So
Thank you.
I can't tell the order in which hands went up, so please do not be offended. We will go with Mel, followed by Fred.
Hi, good evening, all. My name is Melissa Severe. I'm from CD9 Brooklyn. I just wanted to go back to something you said in your presentation about the applicant attends the full board hearing only if community disapproves application. I just wanted clarification on that. So far, what I've seen is that all the applicants come to the full board meeting as opposed to ones that were disapproved. So even if it's approved at committee, it still comes to full board. So just want a clarification on that.
Right. So when I say full board, I mean the full board of the SLA, not the full board of the community board. I'm sorry that I maybe wasn't so clear on that. So we have a board, which is technically called the State Liquor Authority. It's made up of 3 members, the chair and 2 board members, and they vote on whether or not applicants can get their liquor licenses. They also handle fines and enforcement issues. And when there are problems, that's what I meant by the full board. My apologies for that confusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fred, followed by Mandy.
Thank you very much. I have several questions, but I'll just give 1 or 2 right now. So I just wanted to confirm, I think you had mentioned about the measurements for the 500-foot rule and the 200-foot rule. I wanted to confirm, is it a straight line? So in other words, does the entrances have to be on the same street? Or you were saying, okay, well, listen, if it's 250 down one street, but then you take another 100 feet down another street if they're in violation, or they would be in conflict with 500 foot.
That's a good question, Juan. What's the official story on that?
So
So my understanding was it was supposed to be on the same street, like, if it's around the corner, it didn't count.
okay, so for the 500, the best way to do it would be if you were to drop that pin that David showed. I'm sorry. Good evening. Sorry about that. Good evening, sir. So the first thing is what David mentioned, that if you were to drop, this is for the 500, if you were to drop a pin and put it in the middle, right where the applicant is located, then you would take a circle that's 500 foot in radius. That is how we consider the 3 or more establishments that are licensed to be determining factor if the on-premises application is in fact under the 500-foot rule. So this is not for wine applications or grocery store applications. This is for on-premise liquor establishments. So if there are any 3 or more of on-premises liquor within this 500-foot radius of the applicant, then it's deemed that the application is under the 500-foot law.
And can you confirm for the 200-foot as well?
Okay, so now for the 200-foot, no, it's different. So now for the 200-foot, it does count as being on the same side of the street. Now, there is an exception if the applicant location or the church or house of worship or school is located on the corner. If it's located on the corner, then it counts on both sides of the street.
Okay. All right. And if I could ask one last question, and I'll turn it back over. So you said that before, we have within 30 days, 30 days to respond to the notification once we receive that. From a board perspective, sometimes it's tough because depending on when that 30-day drops or when they send us the application, because typically we have to have it go to our full, committee first, which will review, and then it goes to the full board. And depending on when it drops, we may not be able to get a response within that 30 days. Is it possible to get an extension, or what do we do in that?
Yes.
Particularly in the summer, if you're missing, if you're not holding a meeting, there's 2 things. It is possible to get an extension, and often if you ask, but there's another fact that was really working to the community board's advantage, and that is what we call our backlog. It takes almost 6 months for us to review an application. So if you are, you know, sending in your opinion 45 days in, it'll be well within the time that we will be able to take a look at it. We would like that backlog to go away, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be going anywhere soon. So you can count on that a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave, I wanted to add one more thing. The community boards can take advantage of our email inbox that is dedicated for notifications from the community board. So let's say, for example, what the last person asked. If, let's say, the 30 days are up, but you still don't have your meeting, or you're still unsure whether to support or not support, you could always email us. I'm going to share this actually in the link, and I'm going to share that with you guys. What you could basically do is just email the state liquor authority letting us know that you have not made your determination and to please hold until you are able to come to an agreement. Now, we understand that sometimes due to scheduling conflicts or perhaps, things that happen, the applicant might not be able to meet with you guys, but it is very helpful if you at least keep us aware, or make us aware that there are good faith negotiations going between you and the other party. So I will share that with the chat.
Hi, this is Mandy. I think I'm next, from Community Board 6. Thanks so much for this. I am curious a little bit more about the 200-foot rule. What is the sort of burden of proof, I guess, as far as, so, for example, we have a church and a few businesses across the street from the church, but the church operates like once every few months, and I think has operated in ways outside of being a church, which I didn't know that part of the rule. Anyways, I guess I'm just curious how that conversation goes. Like, if these businesses come to us and apply for the liquor license, do they need to like prove the church doesn't operate exclusively as a church, or like how does that play out in reality, I guess is the question, if that makes sense.
We assume that a church is a church, or the house of worship is a house of worship when we see it listed. So if the applicant wants us to look into it, all they really need to do is ask and say, look, we don't think that this is exclusively a church, and we will contact the church. We'll go to the church. I don't know, Margarita, you might know more about this than me.
Yeah, well, the way that our application is structured is we rely on the representations that are made by the applicant. So if the applicant on the application is representing that they are not, they are operating as a church, and everything seems to be correct in the application and it makes sense, we will not look beyond that to question it. Generally, we're complaint driven, or we respond to concerns that are raised to our attention. So if there is a concern raised, then those concerns would eventually, correct me if I'm wrong, Juan, but this is the way I've seen it, those concerns would eventually go to our enforcement bureau, which is where our investigators work, and our investigators would go and investigate whatever claims. If there's a claim that the church is not being exclusively used as a church, then our investigators would assist in trying to establish that. And they would work with, the information that they have, and they would, obviously correspond with the applicant or whatever other evidence that they have to, create the report, their findings, and then, that information would be given to the licensing bureau, and, a decision would be made.
Okay, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, our board, we would like to support these businesses in getting a liquor license, because church like doesn't operate as a church, but they're like not applying for it because they think that you'll just automatically reject it. So I think I'm just not which I guess I'm not sure how we should, which we've told them about the rule, but we also like I also live on that block and I very much know that church is not a church and I'm the chair of the committee. So I guess I'm just wondering, so you'll just say though that that's a church so they can't get our liquor license? Or sorry, I feel like I need a little more clarification.
Okay. All right, Mandy. Thank you for your question. So yes, I guess the best way I could answer the question is that there's really two things that we need to make sure. Number one is going to be the distance, right? That's the first thing that the applicant should make sure of, that the location between the center of the door of their place to the center of the nearest entrance of the school or place of worship is measured. Now, to make it clear, we do have obviously certain points that we need to make sure that the distance is determined using only entrances that are regularly used to give ingress to the students of the school, the general public into the place of worship, or patrons into the establishment. Okay, again, doors that are regularly used to give ingress to the students of the school, the general public into the place of worship, and the patrons into the establishment. If that's 100% found to be less than 200, then you have to go with the exclusive use. So now, the exclusive use, the way we determined, is based on the day-to-day use of the building housing the church or house of worship. So for example, let's say this particular location is a storefront, meaning that there's a church on the ground floor, but then there's apartments above. We need to find out if those apartments above are rented to members of the church or to just the outside public. That is very important. Also, what we need to determine are the use of the building. If the church is holding any events that are deemed non-exclusive, and all this information is actually on our website, I could also share a link, which I believe, one of our, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the cheat sheet for the 200 and 500 foot rules. Yes, that one there is actually, it's still valid. So again, I guess the quick answer would be confirm the distance first, make sure that the door is actually a door that we're going to use, and B, that the use of that building is not exclusive. Another thing that the applicant could do is be proactive and ask the church if they could please submit a letter with the information that we need, the use,
Okay.
and if the house of worship is also a non-for-profit corporation.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, Juan.
You're welcome.
Okay, so there are a number of hands up. So what I'm going to do, David, is just call Jamal, and I think we will refer some of those questions further to the end to allow you to continue through the presentation, okay? So Jamal?
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. So one of the issues that I've noticed, my name is Jamal Corral, CB18, board member, and also leader of our committee. One of the issues we often hear from our residents refers to quality of life issues as it pertains to traffic and double parked cars at some of these establishments. I guess I would like to ask for clarity on, are these factors that we should rightfully be considering when it comes to the liquor license? I'm trying to figure out, are the two issues connected, or is it something that shouldn't be factored?
Yeah, I can speak to that. The administrative law judge certainly considers traffic, parking. Those are factors that certainly matter. And if a community is feeling overwhelmed with cars and traffic, then they can definitely put that as part of their recommendation or for disapproval, for sure.
Okay. And then also just piggybacking on that, also addition, I should have just said it with that one, but also like issues such as garbage. Would that be another reason why you would reject someone's liquor license?
I've never heard about garbage as being one of the reasons to reject. All of these things are part of the process. They're part of what we consider. So one thing on its own is not going to be is not going to cause us to reject. I mean, our job is to give out licenses. That's the mandate, right? Is to provide licenses. So we tend to fall on the side of in favor of things. But it's the combination of factors. If it's garbage, if it's traffic, if it's all of those things put together, I think that's what's going to sort of lead to a different outcome.
Thank you.
I'm seeing in the chat a question, how long do investigations of licensees that are in violation of the stipulations agreed to with the community board generally take? I think, Margarita, maybe you can walk them through the process of complaints and what happens in the enforcement process.
Sure. Yeah, so as I stated before, we're generally complaint driven. So we get complaints from the NYPD, we get complaints from residents, we get complaints from other agencies, and we investigate those complaints. And we do sometimes get email complaints from residents complaining that a licensee is violating their community board stipulations. We may have a complaint like that is investigated by our enforcement bureau. And so the investigators will go, sometimes they'll go undercover and see what's happening. Are they being served liquor on the sidewalk when there's not supposed to be any service on the sidewalk? Are they operating past the 11 p.m. stipulated time? Is there a mariachi band playing there every night in violation of the stipulation, which said that they cannot have live music? And I can't generalize how long it takes, but I can tell you, counsel's office is right next to the Enforcement Bureau, and they're very active. They're very, very active. We are getting reports from the Enforcement Bureau all the time. And right now, the police referrals are not coming in. I mean, it goes in waves of the police referrals, but our enforcement bureau has been very active. So they do try to be as prompt as possible. And then they send their findings to us. They try to use photographs. They'll find social media things showing the violation. If they're, promoting something, that's very strong evidence. If they're promoting bands, if they're promoting hookah, if they're promoting things that they're not allowed to do, then we definitely use that as long as it's a reliable source, like the licensee's Instagram, things like that. So we use we try to build our case using all the available resources. And then the case goes to our office, counsel's office, and then a prosecutor's assigned, and they'll review the evidence and to see, the charges. So we generally charge each violation of the stipulation as a separate charge. There's also a new law that was passed by the legislature, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, which basically says you can't do a bait and switch and say, for example, you're a restaurant and then unilaterally totally change the character of the restaurant and turn it into a hookah bar. We had a recent case, a mass shooting that occurred in Crown Heights, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, where we made a summary suspension presentation in that case, and this was obviously the least of the problems, but one of the problems is that this place unilaterally changed their character from being a restaurant to a hookah nightclub. So so that's that's one of the tools in our toolbox, in addition to charging the stipulations, which make our life a lot easier, because when a licensee says, well, I do the best I can, I don't really know what's going on, I wasn't there. If we have an actual stipulation that they signed on to, then it makes our proving the charge a lot easier.
And I will add, when there's consistent complaints, people often want the SLA to come in and shut a place down right away and very quickly to shut a place down. And that's not really, unless there's violence associated with the place, that's not really the way things work. We give our licensees are our licensees. They're sort of also part of our family. And we give them due process, and it takes time, and it's sort of an escalating process where for a couple complaints in the beginning, they'll just get a letter of advice saying, we need you to change your behavior, need you to do that. And then we'll start to see fines, and those fines will increase. And eventually, after some period of time, then that's when you start to see more aggressive enforcement. But it's not like we're going to go in and shut down every place, because they play loud music every night. That's not really the way that we go about business. I'm seeing another question about renewals. Someone asked, are renewals handled in the same way as regular applications? Are they obliged to still come before the community board? The short answer is no. So renewals, just to be pretty clear, renewals are, well, let's put it this way. There's 60,000 licensees, and most of them get renewed every 2 years. So we're looking at 30,000 renewals every year. And we just don't have the capacity to spend a lot of time on each of those renewals. So renewals at this point are unfortunately sort of rubber stamped. If someone is not having a bad track record necessarily, or a lot of action against them, then renewals are pretty much going to happen, unfortunately, without much debate. So just as a community board, if you're spending a lot of time on renewals, my advice is to cut that process pretty quickly to sort of core. You're either in approval or recommending disapproval. When you're recommending disapproval for a renewal, that's something that we note, but doesn't have the same effect as a disapproval on a new license. So I just to be clear about the way you spend your time. Really, new applications are sort of where it's at, and renewals, there's just not that much action because we just don't have the capacity as an organization to handle 30,000 renewals every year. It's just too much.
But it's not to say that a licensee that's renewed is not, let's say I've had many instances where there was a licensee that we were investigating, where they were renewed, unfortunately, but then, the disciplinary process continues and they could still be prosecuted, after they're renewed. So the fact that they're renewed doesn't foreclose our taking, enforcement action if it's necessary.
Thank you. David, there's a question in the chat, excuse me, that gives an opportunity to explain off and on premise. So I'd like to ask it on behalf of the member. What should we do when we notice liquor stores clearly violating regulations, especially the one about being so closely placed together?
Liquor stores don't necessarily have they don't follow the 500-foot rule because they are what's called an off-premises location. On-premise means, you're consuming the drinks on the premise. That's a bar, a tavern, a restaurant. And that's what the 500-foot rule dictates. Liquor stores don't have to follow the 500-foot rule, so they can be quite close together. We try to avoid that. All liquor stores go before the full board for approval or disapproval. And when they're too close, they tend not to get approved, quite frankly. But in general, if you're seeing something that is not the way it's supposed to be, the best thing that you can do is not call 311. The best thing you can do is to complain to us directly. We have on our website, we have a complaint a way to lodge complaints on our website. So we need the complaints to come to us. 311 does not give us their complaints. So we don't even see it. So we need complaints to come directly from people. The more often you complain, the more likely of seeing action. I would say complain often. The link for that complaint website is in the chat right now. You want to complain often, and you want to be specific in your complaints. Specific times, specific actions, specific days of the week. When are things happening? And the more people who complain, the more likely to see enforcement action. Unfortunately, calls to 311, calls to 911 are obviously your best friend in some ways, because the police can't stand them, and they don't want you to do them, because then they have to respond. But as far as the SLA goes, we really need to see complaints come in directly to us and using our complaint hotline. So that's the way that's what you should do whenever, and you should tell your constituents if they're complaining to you, then they should really be complaining to us, because the more complaints that we get about a location from the more different people, that's where we're going to see action.
Yeah,
Dave?
we've gotten a few complaints about liquor stores that are operating beyond the legal hours, and we've had our investigators go, and those charges have been prosecuted. That's something I've definitely seen recently.
Yeah, I also had one more thing to add. So, as far as the liquor stores goes, we actually do have a certain standard for liquor stores to be approved. The members of the authority actually have a delegation of power, which clearly states the criteria for the package stores. Now, for the package stores, that includes wine stores and liquor stores. There's two different types. There are the ones that sell wine only to go, and then there's the one that sell liquor to go. The number one thing that all new liquor stores have to do is make sure that they post a notice. It's supposed to be in a color copy. I think it's yellow or some bright color. They are supposed to be posting those in front of their establishment in order for the neighborhood to be aware that there is a incoming liquor store or wine store coming in. Additionally, we contact the closest 4 stores to that location, or maybe more, and we ask them for their gross sales letters to make sure that the members of the authority are aware of what the sales are in the neighborhood, because as we all know, certain neighborhoods can definitely take more liquor stores as far as the competition goes, and then there are some neighborhoods that are obviously oversaturated. So there is a set standard that we use for the new incoming liquor stores. We also have liquor stores that move, which would be considered a removal. And there's also a certain criteria that if the licensee that's moving or might be altering their premises as far as the size go, if they meet some of the requirements, they will also have to go to this full board, which is basically think of it as liquor court, and we hold it about once or twice a month.
This here? Why you leave this here? What? Why do you leave this here?
Excuse me?
Excuse me, please mute yourself. Thank you.
Okay, I thought it was a follow-up, but basically that's it. Yeah. So new liquor stores must go before the members of the authority at the full board, and then there's also certain criteria for removal applications or for alteration applications to go before the members of the authority at the full board. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. David, were you done with the presentation with the visual deck?
Yes, our visual deck is all set. We're really here just to take
then we
as
have
many
lots of
questions as
people
we
who've
can.
been sorry. We have lots of people who've been waiting.
think you're muted, Caroline.
Caroline, you were muted before we heard the names.
Oh, I'm sorry. Giovanni?
Hello.
Okay, hi, Giovanni. Ask your question.
Hi, I'm Gio Justiniano from CB4 in Brooklyn, community member on the Permits and Licenses Committee. I do have 3 questions. The first one, which would be a quick one because I kind of missed this when I got on. Regarding the 200-foot rule, if a place of worship is across the street, let's say instead of on the same side of the street, then is the applicant not triggering the 200-foot rule?
No, it counts. It basically counts as if it's in the same street
Okay,
and across the street. Now, another thing to note is that the uh, measurement, again, has to be from the center of the door, from door to door. So it also depends if you know how certain streets are a little wider than others. You might have like,
right.
I guess the Broadway compared to a smaller street. Then, of course, the measurement is going to be much different. But yes, as long as it's located on the same street, it counts. And if the house of worship or the school or the
On the
applicant
corner.
located on the corner, it counts on both sides of the street. So let's say it could be on the avenue or it could be on the side street, if that's the case.
Okay. And then the other question I have, so how much consideration is given to community board recommendations when reviewing applications? Like, what's an example where SLA would proceed with an application that's not in alignment with the community board recommendations or stipulations?
Okay, so you want me to answer this one, Dave, or you got it?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the best way for it to be is if the applicant does not agree to certain stipulations that the community board proposes, or if they flat out don't meet with the community board. So on average, those are the 2 most ways that you could say that are almost automatic. So what we do need to stress is that the community boards notify us as soon as possible that they are in opposition. Now, the fact that you are in opposition or you recommend denial doesn't necessarily mean that the application will be denied. It just means that the applicant will have to go to the full board, which again is our version of liquor court, and they will have to obviously present their case before the members of the authority. It is also very helpful if you as the community board show up to the hearing, because obviously the members having both sides could maybe get a better understanding of what's going on between the 2 parties.
Thank you for that. So then, as an example, then if like in CB4, we have stipulations that we're not doing alcohol sales past 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and an applicant, is clearly in opposition for that. In most cases, we usually vote to recommend, and as long as it's within our stipulations. So, like, would SLA approve the license for the applicant within our stipulations, or would they deny the license if the applicant is still appealing to do alcohol sales to 4? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So, right. So basically what it is, Joe, is that the applicant by law, obviously, we have the county hours, which in general are 4 a.m. Now, if the community board doesn't want that, then yes, it is very important that you at least get it in writing that the applicant will abide by that. If they don't and they fail to sign off it, then your letter of opposition would basically be that you do approve of the application as long as they meet the aforementioned stipulations. And then in your closing paragraph, you could put, if the applicant chooses not to, or however you want to word it, then yes, you could say that you recommend that the application be forwarded to the members of the authority for full board review. So you could almost make that as your standard language if you wanted to use that. But again, it is very important that you do send us the letters and anything else that you would want to put into the letter in as brief as you can. And I shared the email address. I'm actually going to do it one more time in case it got lost in the chat. But we do have a designated inbox that pretty much we monitor all the time, because that's where we are able to match any applicant to any community board stipulations that we receive, or oppositions, of course. And I just
Okay.
shared it.
Thank you for that,
Okay.
Maud. So going forward, because we're beginning to get really short on time, please limit your question to one only. If you have more than that, feel free to send me an email with your question. I'll forward it to our SLA team and share the written response with everyone. Okay, Ursa, Dorothy.
That's actually Irsa. Thank
Ursa.
you for your presentation. I am asking about the 500-foot rule. So as you've mentioned, and I'm from CBA, as you've mentioned, your mandate is to provide licenses. So with, I guess, some concern of saturation, and you using the 500-foot rule to regulate, so to speak, what impresses you more as a reason to have this addition of this restaurant being in the footprint? What is, what moves you to recommend and agree that, or approved that this restaurant can join the others?
I think as the others indicated, when there's a 500-foot hearing, there's an administrative law judge who reviews the evidence presented. And the administrative law judge will issue a report. It's not a final, nothing's really final until it gets approved either, by the full board of commissioners. And if they find that overall this, the opening of this premise is in the public interest, then, the judge would make that recommendation, and then that recommendation and the contents of the report are reviewed by the members. And, if the applicant is in front of the members, I don't know if any of you had the chance to watch any of our full board meetings. They're actually very interesting to watch, because the members do, it's not a hearing, it's an open meeting where the applicants are interviewed, much as the same way as you interview the applicants. But, a lot of questions are asked, and then the determination is made whether or not overall the issuance of the licenses in the public interest. That's the standard, is it in the public interest?
So what would you say is a percentage of those that you reject, or are rejected within that system?
I couldn't answer that. I would be totally speculating.
Just
Yeah.
really curious, because it just seems, because it is a license fee that you collect. So really, what would be what would really be a reason to reject them? What would be the reason? That's what because as far as I know, people are still allowed to join in when they're restaurants that are more than that amount. So that's really my question. Do you really are disapprovals coming down for oversaturation as a concern?
Margarita, I guess I could just say, I guess the short version of that, because again, it's the administrative law judge, and obviously they have their own criteria. But in general, that's a very hard question to answer, because every neighborhood and every block is so different that each one really has to be pretty much based on its own merits. So you cannot really have a comparison, because each neighborhood is so different. So it really does depend on how many locations, obviously, and also what different kind of experience or cuisine the incoming applicant brings to the neighborhood. So that's kind of I guess the short version of it is really that.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously the application would be disapproved in general when obviously the new applicant does not bring any change to the neighborhood. Let's just say there's already 4, let's say, I don't know, Jamaican restaurants, and now the applicant's coming with the 5th, and their location is going to be very similar to the other 2. So obviously that makes no sense. Or another scenario would be that the applicant does not answer the questions completely because it's a 50 question questionnaire, or they do not, or they provide a false material statement. So that could also be a reason why they are denied.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you, Dorothy, followed by Lisa. Please stick to one question so everyone can get a shot at it.
Thank you. Dorothy Gordon from CB17, and I have a quick question. I think it's quick. Is adverse true if there's a restaurant already there, but there's a new business that want to come, like a daycare or a place of worship? Can they get their business approved to be at the location? Does that make sense?
Sure, it does. For your
Okay.
question. So basically, we at the authority have what we consider the grandfather clause, which is pretty much stating that if the liquor license is there first, as long as that location remains licensed as a on-premise liquor application, it doesn't matter if a church or any other disqualifying quote unquote use comes in, that location can continue to stay as a liquor establishment. And believe it or not, there's also one that says that if the establishment is in operation since December 5th of 1933, which is the end of prohibition. So pretty much that's where the grandfather rule comes in.
Okay, so I'm saying you wouldn't deter a school from coming in if that business is already there.
No, not
Okay.
at all. Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah, as long as the premises is licensed first before anything that would let's say disqualify a new applicant, it doesn't matter. The liquor license is considered grandfathered, and as long as there's no interruption in licensing, then that premises can remain a liquor establishment forever.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Quickly, Lisa, Camacho, Michael. And that's Silverman, Michael.
Hi there, good evening. This is Lisa. You made a distinction between the full liquor stores or full liquor license versus those that are just wine and beer. Establishments that are selling just wine and or beer, do they have to come before community boards as well?
In New York City, anything that's considered on premises, which would mean people physically drinking in the establishment, they must notify the community board. So for example, if it's a beer, let's call it like maybe like a diner, old school diner that just wants to sell beer, they would have to notify because they would technically allow persons to drink. A restaurant that's only selling wine or a regular bar that's just selling wine, they also have to notify the community board of their intent to operate, because again, the community board has the opportunity to recommend stipulations if they want to as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Camacho.
Thank you for the information. I am applying, let's say, for Camacho CB4. I am applying, and I have X amount of days, and my establishment is not already, and I'm working with someone else's license, and I'm going to do what he called maybe a corporate change, or haven't decided yet. Because if it's a corporate change, I know you guys don't change the hours of operation because they're running it. They're changing the name and it's a corporation. And we got a lot of them that do that and wait, and they're not even established or done or changed over. And they go to their attorney and says, well, we're not coming down this month, we're coming next month. And then realize it's a corporate change because now the stipulation doesn't work. How is it that we can work where we can have the information that they need for us to say it's a corporate change, we don't change the hours, the steps don't work, and we're only advising them in their hours, and the new app, and we change their hours, or we request to change their hours of operation. Then they turn around and says, well, we're not going to submit our paperwork now. We're going to submit it later on because now they want to see if they work out a deal with a corporate change. How does that work? If they're not even ready or don't have anything, but yet they're coming to us and they're presenting and the place is not even open, they haven't.
Okay, thank you for your question. So that one, okay, so first of all, I went ahead and put the link to our website that deals with a change in license. Now, a corporate change is when the licensee is going to change corporate ownership. If they're going to change their method of operation, which I think is more what you're speaking about, then that's a different application as well. So can you please clarify which one you're talking about? Is it changing
No,
owners?
they're not changing. They're not changing their methods of operation, but they're doing it because we have specs now and the hours are different. So now they're going 4 a.m. and now since they're a new applicant, we're only shooting them down to 2 a.m. So now they're trying to scheme the system and run around the corner. So that's my question to you. Nothing changed. All he wants, he hasn't even got anything done yet, but he came through the full board. And now he says, well, I'm not going to put this in. I'm going to wait and see. Now what happens then?
Okay, so this individual you're speaking about is a new applicant that does not have a liquor license yet, correct?
He doesn't, but he's working with someone want to do a corporate change. Yes.
Okay, so if he wants to come in to an existing business via a corporate change,
Correct.
meaning he's going to buy shares or percentage of the existing business, the existing licensee, the business, has to operate the way that they were initially licensed. So he does have to respect that. If he wants to change that in the future, then yes, he could file for a method of operation change, which will allow him the benefit, to go before the members, and then the members will be the ones that decide if they want him, let's say to open later at a DJ, do dancing. But in the meantime, if he's just coming in to an existing licensee, then he has to abide by any and all existing stipulations.
Sorry, Camacho. We're in the same committee, in the same board. I just want to expand a bit. So the issue with this specific person is that like the business exists. He was going to take over the business and therefore they submitted a new liquor application. We reviewed the application. We realized all these things were wrong with it. And then they decided actually to not continue on with the application, but instead now he's going to buy into the business so that way they can use the existing license, which is operating until 4 a.m. from a previously approved application. And then at some point, the owner who owns the current license is going to, buy himself out. And so we're saying that this is a way to skirt around the process of applying for a new application under our current stipulations. So that way they can stay with the existing application.
Right. Okay. Right. So then what you could do is you could still write that opposition letter to the corporate change and obviously clearly identify that you are aware that this is the new incoming principal's way of trying to skirt the system. Yes, you could definitely do that. You could also file a complaint. I shared the link on the chat. If you feel that the applicant's already there operating and not the old owner, you could also, but again, if you have evidence and if you know pretty much that you could get in there and kind of check to see who's operating, you could also file a complaint with the SLA to have an investigator ask for books and records to verify if the old owner is basically letting the new guy in before they even file for their change. Because unfortunately, we do know that people do that.
They are doing it. They both presented, and they're actually engaging at that right now.
Oh, great! So yeah, so you could just file.
Correct.
Yeah, I put the link to our enforcement hotline, so you could just pretty much go in there, fill everything out. It's pretty self-explanatory, and then you could add any additional info on an email, and you could also email that to our enforcement bureau as well. Or you could also reach out to me or to Dave. I could share my email with you guys as well. It's not a problem.
Please and
Sure.
thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. No problem.
I think 2 more questions before our guests have to go, unless they're going to give us a couple more minutes. Michael, followed by Bennett.
Hi, this is Mike Silverman from Community Board 13. I just wanted to clarify something. We were talking about the 200-foot versus 500-foot. And I think you made it clear that we're talking about it being the main entrance of a school as opposed to the property line. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It has to be to the door, or if there's a driveway that leads to a door, then obviously the measurement will be to the beginning of the driveway.
Oh, okay. Because when we talk about zoning and land use and things like that, it's definitely, I believe, the property line, whether or not there's a driveway there. So I
Correct.
just want to make sure there's that difference.
Yes, no, yeah, for us, it would be the entrance at street level. And again, it would have to be for the door we're talking about is a door that gives ingress to the general public into the place of worship. So we know that obviously churches have multiple entrances. So that is one thing that has to be definitely verified, that whatever the door in question is used for ingress.
Okay, or the driveway leading to that door.
That is correct, yes. And there are there's certain circumstances in which obviously that will be the case, but in most, it's more the door to door.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome, sir.
What type of feature you would have?
You, Bennett?
Yes, good evening. Joanna Bennett, Community Board 4. I don't know about other community boards, but one of the problems with Community Board 4 is that we are not getting notifications from the SLA about whether or not they have approved an applicant. That is essential for us to know. Once we've done our due diligence and everything, our process, we don't know what happens. We're not told whether the SLA approved, gave a license or rejected one. So I don't know about other community boards. If they're getting those notifications, does the SLA do that?
Good evening. Thank you for your question. The SLA does not do, let's call them follow-ups. What we do notify the community board is if there's going to be a 500-foot hearing, which was previously mentioned, or if the applicant is going to go to the members of the authority. Now, what you could do as a matter of practice is, I don't know if you saw when Dave shared the link and also his quick recap of the State Liquor Authority map project. There you could follow up and find out about any and all applications in your community board.
So in other words, you're saying that the SLA does not notify community boards about the status of applications?
No, unless you submit a specific request or a 500-foot hearing, like I mentioned before, we wouldn't notify the community boards, because again, there's so many applications, it would be hard to track each application.
It just seems we do our work and submit all of our paperwork instead of what is it to just send an email to say the application has been accepted or rejected. I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be very complicated, once we've done our work, to give us a status.
Well, again,
And
ma'am, what I had mentioned is that if you are requesting information on a particular application, you could definitely notify us. But as far as to my knowledge, we do not update each community board of applications that are approved. Again, due to the volume, we're talking about hundreds of applications, even thousands. Now, I could defer to David if he knows the specific reasons, or if there's another way that we could maybe implement something like that. But at least to my knowledge, we don't, unless we get a specific request from the community board about a specific application.
We don't, it's just a question of volume and a question of staff. We're, you know, how many examiners do we have in New York City? One?
Right now we have 13 and 6 of them are brand new.
Right. So we have about 13 people looking at Zone 1 applications. It's not a big crew, and we try and go through them as quickly as we can. And you know, it's overwhelming work, I should say. You can always send an email to me and ask me, or give me a call. I'm going to give you my contact information, and you can always reach out to me, and I will tell you anything that I can tell you.
I'm just predicting that our committee was going to be asking each and every time, what is the status of an applicant? Because we're concerned about the quality of life, oversaturation in our community. And this is definitely information that we need to know. It just seems so elementary that we would know this, be given this information, since the SLA has the final word. But thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm not going to prolong this.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's 7:18. We're not going to go much longer. Nydia, can you keep your questions short, please?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Nydia Bonafon, co-chair of the Quality of Life Community Board 5. My question is, what do you do with the submissions that don't have our decision, don't have anything from the community board specifying any stipulation, any agreement, anything? They just went directly to you.
Well, they can't legally come directly to us. They have to go through you. However, a lot of times we won't hear from a community board, in which case we just continue by reviewing the application.
And what about with the precinct? Can you say anything a little bit about the precincts? How much authority they have? Because some of the applicants go directly to the precinct, and the precinct goes to you.
Yeah, they're totally independent. We don't consider it. I mean, if you know, a recommendation from any community member, you know, certainly counts, and that's true for NYPD as well. If they recommend a licensee, you know, be approved, it certainly counts as a positive factor, but it's not the only factor for sure.
Okay, I think we got most of our questions. Zlati.
One big mistake.
Zlati, are you still on? You get the last question.
Yes, hi. It's Eve Cohen. It's Zlati and Eve Cohen together. I'm just going to ask, how long do these establishments get the temporary license? And if we advise the SLA that we're against them having a license, do they immediately get a notice that the temporary license is disqualified? Or they can have that temporary license until it expires?
Great. Thank you for your question. Oh, sorry, Dave. You want to take it?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Juan.
Okay, so there's a change. There was a recent change to the law, and the new initial temporary permit applications are for 180 days. That's the length. Before there used to be 90, now they're 180. Could you repeat part 2 of your question? I'm sorry.
Sure. So let's say within the 6 months, even though your backlog is 6 months, but let's say within the 6 months you get some miracle happens and you get our notification that we do not feel this establishment should get a license. Are they notified immediately that the temporary license is no longer valid, or they just can use it until the 180 days are up?
Okay, thank you for that. So no, we do not remove or cancel their temp. All that would happen is that their main application would appear before the members of the authority at the full board. So at that time, they would have to obviously convince the members of the authority that they should get their main license. Their temp will be active as long as they do not obviously have any major violations or let it lapse.
Okay, just and one other thing to this. Maybe David can answer this better. I understand there's too many applications to tell us when they're approved, but since it seems like they're very rarely not approved, how about if by the way, I'm from CB9, how about at least letting the community boards know when they're not approved like we requested? Like that seems like there's maybe like 1 in every 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. So how about even at least having that, letting us know that, yes, we didn't want something and you guys said, we'll stand with you.
Yeah, it's a good idea, and I can bring that up with the higher ups for sure. I think that, you know, we want to be as open and clear for communication as we can be. There are more disapprovals than it sounds like you think. We
Okay,
do
I'm glad to
disapprove
hear
quite a
that.
bit. Yeah, but it is sort of beyond our capacity now. Again, if anyone, I put my email and my phone number in the chat. If anyone wants to reach out to me about a specific application, I can do that. And actually, Lisa Derrick just brought up a good point. There is a public database of licenses that are pending and that are approved, and that is updated every day. So that's a way of finding out. And let me just, while this next, maybe one last question goes, I'll find the link to the database. So I'll just find that very quickly.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Okay, everyone, thank you so very much for coming on. Really want to thank the team from the SLA, David, Juan, and Margarita, for answering our questions in such great detail. I hope everyone thought that this was a very valuable use of time, that it was educational, and that it has given you additional tools when you review applications at the board. As community board members, you are the first, you're like the infantry, you're on the front lines of the impact that these licenses can have on our community. And when we think of them, we should think of it in the manner that David started off, telling us the impact it has on our economy. They provide socialization, but at the same time, the last thing we want is for our communities to be oversaturated and experiencing a lot of negative impacts that they can bring. And it's your job as community board members to ensure that balance is created. I thank you so very much for your time today. And again, thank you all to the SLA team for being here. And as you see, we have very engaged community board members over here in Brooklyn. So we're going to do this again sometime next year.
I just want to make one last comment. I'm sorry. I think someone stated a concern about when we prosecute, do we like throw people in jail? Absolutely not. We prosecute licensees, the license. And as David said, and I just wanted to make it clear what our policy is, we aim to, we have 2 goals. We want to, obviously promote business and foster temperance. So those 2 goals together. So we try to work with licensees to get them to be compliant. So it's incremental punishment. So they get educated, then they pay a fine. And if it keeps going, obviously, then, so I just wanted to make that clear. We don't throw anyone in jail. So just in case anyone had that concern.
And for additional questions, everyone, email me. I'll send them to the team and I can share written responses with everyone. Don't keep, the pearls that you can get if you ask it directly. Let's share it.
Thank you
very
so
much.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
night.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you for sharing with us.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.